People live in the present. They plan for and worry about the future. History, however, is the study of the past. Given all the demands that press in from living in the present and anticipating what is yet to come, why bother with what has been? Given all the desirable and available branches of knowledge, why insist on a good bit of history?
There we go. Okay, we're good to go. I'm Dave Oberg, Executive Director of the Elmhurst History Museum. It's my pleasure to be here with City Manager Jim Grabowski today to talk a little bit about, some cause for celebration. We're going to talk a little bit about our 50th anniversary of moving back into the Gloss Mansion and talk a little bit about how the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation has really built up and contributed to the museum and its history as well. So Jim, thanks for being here.
My pleasure, Dave. Thanks for asking.
All right.
The museum obviously keeps history alive within the community, and that is very important to Elmhurst. I learned that from day one when I started here. When I came in, we were just on the tail end of the 08-09 recession, and the History Museum and the foundation had taken a financial cut from the city. But it was kept alive, and it was kept alive by the foundation, and that was very important to keep that. There was a group on City Council who wanted to make sure that we continued with it. My experience from a history museum was from the town that I grew up in, which was 2 tables in the library. And that was it. When I came here to experience what Elmhurst had, that was really incredible to understand.
The audience has certainly grown. Not only here in Elmhurst, but also, as you know, throughout the Chicago area. And I think the museum has been recognized as a destination in the area.
The foundation is just not about fundraising, though that's an important thing, but also to promote the history of the community, to let people know the value of the past here and how that has impacted the kind of city that we have right now.
And we have a history, and we need to preserve that history, and we do it through this institution. We didn't just fall out of an apple tree.
We create a shared sense of identity. We realize that despite whatever background we come from, we have a lot in common. We share a lot of the same fears, concerns, hopes, and dreams as well. And the museum really acts as a tool for civic engagement and building that broader sense of community and rootedness.
The earliest murmurs of getting some sort of historical organization off the ground in Elmhurst can be traced all the way back to the centennial celebration that the city had in 1936. That was really the first time that the city looked backwards on its own history. Just based on news clippings and such, the organization that was involved in organizing that celebration asked businesses to bring artifacts and items from the pioneer days and display them in their windows and such. And after that celebration, there was talk about getting something more official off the ground. That obviously didn't happen. It was probably too difficult during the Great Depression, and then World War II was right around the corner. However, in the early 1950s, that was the next time that this issue was revisited.
The forerunner to the Elmhurst History Museum was the Elmhurst Historical Commission, which was established by the city of Elmhurst in 1952. And it's unusual to see an action like that taken by a city, by the way. It shows that the city of Elmhurst really valued its history. And so the commission was charged with collecting and preserving the history of the community in the post-war period as the museum was really expanding and changing dramatically.
The museum itself came to be 5 years later, January 1957. The museum opened its doors on the 3rd floor of the Gloss Mansion upstairs. The Gloss Mansion was City Hall at the time, so the museum was just a single room on the third floor of City Hall. The hours were sporadic. It was only open a couple days a week, and the collection was really just getting off the ground.
And the museum collection, an all-volunteer organization, I should say at this point, continued to expand to the point that we vacated our little space in the Gloss Mansion and moved to the Wilder Mansion by 1965.
The Elmhurst Public Library was undergoing an expansion in the mid-1960s, and space became available over there, and the museum packed up and moved over to the Wilder Mansion in 1965.
The museum was run by a board of commissioners at the time. They were totally in charge. They were appointed by the mayor. They hired me. It was very, very part-time. The museum at the time was 2 rooms in the Elmhurst Public Library, which was in the Wilder Mansion. They had another person already there, Lillian Harlan, and so she and I worked together, and essentially, you know, I gave tours, I talked to people that came in, I updated the exhibits so they weren't always the same. We got word somewhere along the line that the city was going to move the museum to the Gloss Mansion. The city always owned the Gloss Mansion, and in fact the museum had 2 rooms on the 3rd floor when it opened originally. Then it moved over to the library, so it was kind of coming home back to the Gloss Mansion.
Plans were put into motion to eventually move the museum back from Wilder Mansion to the Gloss Mansion. And that was a fairly long renovation process. From the 1940s through 1970, there had not been a lot of upkeep with the mansion as it was when it was City Hall. And before we started moving the museum over back to the mansion, there needed to be a lot of work done to create proper gallery spaces and just to maintain the integrity of the building. So it was a fairly large project to renovate the mansion to be the new Elmhurst Historical Museum. That was finally completed in early 1975, and the museum finally moved from the Wilder Mansion to the Gloss Mansion in May of that year. On May 18th, 1975, there was a nice little ceremony here hosted by the Historical Commission, opening the museum's doors, and it's been here in the Gloss Mansion ever since.
The museum was run by this commission of volunteers, and mainly they were business people or educators. Many of them were from longtime families, but none had, and including me, I wasn't on the commission, but none of us had professional museum experience.
So beginning in the early 80s, that was when the commission hired the first professional executive director, Virginia Stewart. She came from an archives background. She came into this role in 1982 and began to immediately organize the collection, make sure that the archives were accessible to the public for research, and really professionalized the department. We became a proper department of the city at that point.
The city really made an investment in professionalizing the organization and hired a professional core staff, which included Virginia Stewart, our first full-time professional executive director. And Virginia and her team really laid a strong foundation for creating a museum that really began to punch above its weight. She and her team introduced a lot of intellectual rigor into the research that went into our programs and exhibits, a regular roster of programs and exhibits, and began building up a very strong team here. Brian Berghager would follow as the second executive director in the history of the museum and would continue both expanding the team and expanding the actual footprint of the museum.
The commission was looking for someone, maybe, and this was my take on it, the truth as I remember it, but looking for someone who would be able to take the museum to the next step, because Virginia had done so much in taking the museum from a volunteer organization to a paid staff, professionally trained director. And so she was leaving to go to a grad program, a PhD program, and my sense was at the time that the question in everyone's mind is, what's next? What are we going to do next? We've achieved this level with Virginia, but what else can we do? And it was a bit of a period of acclimation, getting used to the facility here. This was the entire museum. There was no education center, no Churchville Schoolhouse, no off-site storage. This was it. So we had the 4 employees all in what we call the back office, the back porch, and the opportunity to go beyond that was something that I was looking for.
The museum continued to experience growth throughout the 90s. In the 2000s, we acquired both the education center next door that greatly enhanced our ability to provide public programming, as well as the Churchville one-room schoolhouse, which has been a wonderful addition to both the museum's collection and programming opportunity.
At the same time, Brian continued to build up the team here, bringing on some very, very professional individuals who lent their time and their talent and their treasure to the organization. You saw a real sea change, I think, in just the high quality of exhibits with the hiring of Lance Tauser as curator of exhibits here. That's when we began staging exhibits that got attention in the greater Chicagoland media, even some national attention, and we saw a lot of national awards, state awards for some of the high quality of those exhibits. Hiring a wonderful, actually creating a full-time position, curator of education and public programs position, and getting Jess Wandersee here to really build up a tremendous award-winning array of different programs aimed at all kinds of different age groups and learning styles. Basically consolidating some positions and bringing Dan Lund, our curator of collections here, to give full-time attention to building up our collections and really organizing things in a way that we meet the highest museum standards.
It seems to me that the museum is really, how do I want to say this? Looking good, for lack of a better term. I know that you rely on the foundation and some of the grant money that you can get to bring in these different exhibits that you bring in. And it's one after another. Your calendar is full of them. It's almost like they're bumping into one another. At one time, those things were a once-a-year event or maybe a twice-a-year event. And today they're able, and you're able, to fill the calendar. And one stops one week, and as soon as you could rebuild the exhibits, the next one starts. And so it's really filled out the function of the museum, and that's what keeps it interesting.
What I remember about that time was there's a historical commission which was appointed by the mayor, and then a foundation which had come along much later. 1992, I believe, the original foundation was created.
Well, I believe it was created in the early 90s. My records say 1992. I knew people that were on it. And it was strictly more of a financial thing to raise money and funds for the museum. I know when they talked about merging the two different groups, not everybody was on board initially because you want to vet things out and understand what's the purpose and what's really going to happen. But once it was all explained and everybody got together, I think it was pretty unanimous. It would be a good thing.
The commissioners were appointed by the city. The Elmhurst History Museum Foundation was made up of volunteers, and then this third group of the Elmhurst Historical Society was also made up of volunteers who had a particular interest in preservation of buildings in the community. So as far as there just wasn't a lot of integrated effort among those three groups. So there wasn't any sense of competition.
In all cases, we were talking about volunteers, with the exception of Brian and the museum staff. So everybody's heart was in the right place. It was just a matter of sort of working through the logistics.
As me and Tom Borchard would talk once in a while, it was like, well, whose responsibility is this? Whose responsibility is that? It was kind of a who's on first thing. Why do we have these duplicate organizations whose functions are definitely different, but if you know what do they call those, a Venn
diagram.
A Venn diagram, they had a great overlap. And we thought it would be more efficient, and not only more efficient, but more productive to put those two together.
The decision was made along about 2005 that we needed to combine our efforts and combine our voices to have more of an impact on the community.
The big watershed moment in my belief as it relates to the current arrangement we have now at the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation was, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, there was a strategic planning committee formed in August of 2005. I really can't say if there was an existing strategic plan that needed to be redone, or if this was sort of an idea that finally had arrived. But the one-room schoolhouse had been acquired. The new library was in place, but the Wilder Mansion was going to be empty. And there was thought that the museum could move into at least some of, if not all, of the Wilder Mansion.
The people who were on the original board, did something that was very appropriate at that time. But there was interest in moving the museum to another level. Mayor Marcucci was very interested in creating a heritage center in Elmhurst. And he had land in mind adjacent to the new library, land owned by the city. Another option was to move the History Museum into the Wilder Mansion, which was vacated when they built the new library.
And there were people in the community who thought that was a great idea. There were people in the community who didn't think that was a good idea at all. But it was an idea that was floated out there, and a strategic plan seemed to be a way to get at multiple issues that were sort of bouncing around. It's a large committee, but it was asked to fast track a strategic plan. The first meeting was, as I've already said, in August of '05. We had a working document in December of that year. Once a month, we met for 5 hours. And you didn't want to miss a meeting. And it was, to use the term, a rather high-powered committee. The mayor was at virtually every meeting. The city manager was at every meeting. And then you had this cross-section of, institutions and organizations. It was quite a group. And we worked hard. And we had a working draft of a strategic plan in December of that year. The lead-off, the first notes in the minutes from the first meeting of August 31 include, quote unquote, this is Tom Borchert, the city manager. This is an epic committee. We're on a journey, independent of but related to saving the Wilder Mansion.
At the end of the day, here in Elmhurst, the decision was made to create a new organization, Elmhurst Heritage Foundation, and some commissioners and board members of the old foundation were invited to participate on the board. But new people were also brought in. And it was really through the strategic planning process that these individuals, by and large, were identified and recruited.
You know, to funnel resources together between the two entities, that it would be a good thing to take advantage of all those resources together. So management wanted to blend the foundation in with the commission. So I believe that happened in 2007.
So by relatively early in 07, March 19, 2007, there was a full draft of the responsibilities of the board of directors of the, what was still at that point, the Elmhurst Historical Museum Foundation, which, and I've got handwritten notes on this, quotes, how about Elmhurst Heritage Foundation, unquote, rather than friends of. People like that, and that's ultimately what it became. But it was an independent 501c3 organization, 21-member board of trustees. City of Elmhurst will continue to own the buildings, collections, and equipment. Cooperation agreement, foster awareness, support the Heritage Center in Elmhurst, a department of the city. Fundraising for the Heritage Center.
There was a big push for what was called a Heritage Center in town, which would have been located by the post office on the north end of Wilder Park. And that would include many entities, possibly the Park District, possibly the university, the college at the time, and obviously the museum. And I think there were some pretty detailed plans that were drawn up for that. The only thing lacking was money.
The Heritage Center was part of what Mayor Marcucci envisioned as a cultural campus in Elmhurst. You know, right across from the college, right with the park, right with the new library, consolidate all of that, but still keep the Gloss Mansion as a historic house museum.
And then we had a team. It was quite a few people. I don't remember all the names, but there was probably 15 or 20 people on this new board. And there were a bunch of committees that were formed to target different things to help develop the awareness of the museum and all the things that it did do and all the things it could do. We had a really phenomenal starting gala in 2007 that really brought a lot of people to the focus of the new mission of the museum and the foundation, and that was, I think, the attendance was outstanding. I think everybody was impressed with the commitment to start that. So that began the journey of the new Heritage Foundation together.
The game changer was this event, the 50th anniversary of the Elmhurst Historical Museum, held back in 2007. And this was planned by a group that Mayor Marcucci put together, and the people who were on that committee were very good at fundraising. They were very good, very well connected in the community. Kathy Jordan, Jackie Haddad, Fred Catalano, and I remember Val Stewart and I walked into the event at it was a brand new Westin Hotel in Lombard, the one that's there in the Yorktown shopping mall. And we just kind of looked at each other and went, wow, there must have been 300 people there. It's like, we've never done anything like this before. So that was really a game changer. And some of those people then became board members as we went through the transition to a new board. And that made a tremendous difference.
Then the Great Recession comes along, and capital funding was nowhere. It was not even anything anybody would talk about. We were worrying, the city and the community was worrying about just maintaining regular goods and services, let alone building a heritage center, whether it was a new building or a retrofit. I also mentioned that having the museum move into the Wilder Mansion was a little controversial with some folks. They didn't see that as the best and highest use. And ultimately, the Park District decided they didn't want to sell the Wilder Mansion. And so the Wilder Mansion then eventually morphs into what it is now, a banquet, special event, wedding venue that the Park District runs, which is absolutely fine. I mean, there's no issues there, whatever. So the museum, the whole notion of a heritage center went on the shelf.
The third option was to remain in the Gloss Mansion and bring that up to a higher level of use. And that was everybody's third choice, but here we are. So
there was a hiring freeze. There were budget reductions, and that's what happened. Those things passed, and through the leadership of somebody like Tom Borchert and the patience of board members with the Heritage Foundation, for instance, we get over those things.
I think the Heritage Foundation, from its creation in '07 with these two disparate organizations, both with the same objective, helped the museum, has worked out better than anybody probably would have thought.
Foundation, they've recognized the role that they play. It's been over a decade now that they've been in existence. And I think at first there was some back and forth to what oversight they might have on the museum and the staff. And I think the foundation has really found their area of where they need to be as far as fundraising and advocacy to support the staff in the exhibits, not to run them, but to support them. And that's been very important to make sure that that relationship works.
So the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation really plays a critical, I think, mission critical role, both to support the museum and to extend our reach into not just the community of Elmhurst, but even beyond. It is our nonprofit fundraising arm for the museum. All volunteer members of the foundation do a great job, not only of raising private sector dollars, which underwrite all of our great programs and exhibits, but they also amplify the message of the museum. They advocate for the museum and for the causes the museum supports as well. They help us build bridges, bring in new partners, and really, again, create that network of support for the institution that really helps us punch well above our weight.
and then also just to see the contributions that a group of residents in the community were able to make into something that is important to the community. I think that the Elmhurst History Museum is just such a valuable asset, and it's so fun to come and see people getting excited about things that are here, and the people that come to the exhibit receptions, and we see them, many of them again and again, those that have supported us through the years. And there have been some ups and downs, as there are with any organization, but on the whole, I think it's just been a terrific experience.
People really get a shared sense of community when they come here. There's nothing I'm more gratified at than when I get to walk through the galleries and I see people who don't know each other, might not even come from the same community, but they're talking and having a conversation about something that brought them here, exchanging ideas. And ultimately, I think that's the true role of the museum in the community.
And that's one of the things that I enjoy about the museum and the Heritage Foundation, that it brings all that to life and keeps it real. And it's not just a memory, because a lot of those older folks that I was looking up to 30 and 40 years ago, they're gone. They're not here to tell their stories anymore. If we don't go out of our way to preserve it, it's gone. So that special thing about Elmhurst, that it has a history, is inculcated into this building and is preserved by this building and the function of the museum and the Heritage Foundation.
Looking back, I think we can be very proud of the fact that our museum was really established as an all-volunteer city commission, that it has grown and achieved great things over time. This decision to create a commission that ultimately gave birth to the museum shows that Elmhurst truly, truly values its past. And I think just as much when I look to the future, there will be challenges, there are always challenges, but I think that the future for the museum and for the community of Elmhurst is bright.